Sullivan, drop your pants.
Everyone went to Brian's house, and his house was a little off. I noticed a painting in the room of a birthday clown holding balloons. It said, "To Brian, I hope you enjoy the painting. Best wishes, your friend, John Wayne Gacy." He kept like this pile of letters and photos from John Wayne Gacy in his nightstand next to his bed.
Dan Schneider has released a statement defending all accusations about him. Drake Bell and I have been messaging, and I have a message from Drake to you guys. And now Kyle Sullivan is speaking out by revealing some sinister things he saw at Nickelodeon. There is a lot to unpack here, so let's get into it. If you aren't subscribed to the Let's Get Into It podcast, then you're only getting half the tea. For longer videos, deep dives, and of course, more of me, subscribe to the Let's Get Into It podcast listed in the description below. It's about time the world learns how bad Dan Schneider really was. I mean, the things that happened behind the scenes at Nickelodeon are disgusting. We have been exposing this on my channel. I think my most viewed video is about exposing Dan Schneider, but now his victims have a safe place to come forward and to share their stories in this documentary. Before we get into some of the updates, I want to give you guys a statement from Dan Schneider. He says, "Everything that happened on the shows I ran was carefully scrutinized by dozens of involved adults." Well then, name them. All stories, dialogue, costumes, and makeup were fully approved by network executives on 2 coasts. Okay, I guess on the East Coast and the West Coast. I don't know why that's relevant. A standards and practicing group read and ultimately approved every script, and programming executives reviewed and approved all episodes. I mean, like, TV typically goes. In addition, every day on set, there were always parents and caregivers and their friends watching us rehearse and film. Okay, Dan Schneider, did you ask ChatGPT to write this? Because there's really no acknowledgement at all at the fact that some of your child stars actually were harmed, and the people who harmed them were criminally convicted. I mean, how do you think people like Drake Bell feel hearing Dan Schneider give this statement out saying that everything was okay and dismissing the fact that this guy who was employed by Dan had harmed Drake multiple times and went to jail for it? Speaking of Drake, I've actually been talking to him over Twitter. I believe we're going to have a phone call soon, which I'm really looking forward to. But there are 2 things he wants me, I want to clarify, because I misrepresented some of the truth. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and look at my message with him real quick and just tell you guys what I am going to relay. So first, the show. So the show that he was given, Drake and Josh, was not a gift from the network because of what he went through with Brian Peck. Actually, Brian Peck wanted to be the father figure on the show in the series, and Drake was adamantly against that. He did not want this man to be around him any more than he had to be. So the network wasn't fully aware, I guess, of what Brian Peck was up to by the time this show was already bought and approved. So no, it wasn't a gift from the network. And then 2, Drake had his own criminal, situation a few years ago, and we talked about it on this channel, and he is not, I believe, on the SO list, like the offender list. I just want to clarify that because he was never convicted of any like physical crimes or any crimes that would violate Megan's Law. You guys know the whole Nicki Minaj and Megan Thee Stallion situation. So Megan's Law is a real thing. Drake did not fall into that, so he is not someone who has to be on the offenders list. So I just want to make that very clear, because I think that, me included, I have had some misunderstandings. So don't we love when we can clarify and get to that moment? But let's go ahead and just jump into this video and some updates we have on this entire Nickelodeon situation. Now, if you haven't heard of John Wayne Gacy, he is a scary, nasty, evil man who, took lives from people, to say the least. And there is some bizarre connections between him and Brian Peck. This documentary, Quiet on Set, is lifting the curtain on the kids' empire built by Nickelodeon's hitmaker Dan Schneider, examining the allegations of abusive behavior and a toxic work environment. As we know, Drake Bell reveals himself as the person who was harmed by Brian Peck. This is, again, something we talked about in a video I think I posted like 3 years ago, so it's wild to see it being reported now. Across the 2 episodes, Nickelodeon stars and staff members discussed their experiences with Brian Peck, including a sinister anecdote relating to the serial killer John Wayne Gacy. I didn't see that one coming. If you don't know John Wayne Gacy, he was committing a bunch of different nasty crimes in the 70s, assaulting, torturing, and harming at least 33 young men and boys. He was known as the Killer Clown due to the fact that he performed at children's parties and charity events as his alter ego, Pogo the Clown. Now don't worry, Pogo the Clown no longer exists because he was executed by lethal injection in 1994. Ooh. I would say rest in peace, but I don't know if he's resting up in peace or resting down there.
5 things you didn't know about the killer clown, John Wayne Gacy. Some of his victims had been in his basement for so long that their bones had fused together. It took 2 whole years to put together the full skeletons. Some of his 33 victims are still unidentified. Like many serial killers, he suffered a head injury. At 11 years old, he was under a swing set and got hit on the head. It formed a blood clot that wasn't identified until he was 16. Over that 5 years, he suffered blackouts that went away once the blood clot was treated. His mother's underwear kept going missing, and she found out that her young son John had been stealing her underwear and burying it underneath the house. This behavior stopped for a while, but once he turned 15, he started stealing neighborhood girls' underwear off of their clotheslines and burying it underneath the house as well. Given where the majority of his victims were found, it's extremely chilling. He may not have acted alone. In a 1992 interview, he claimed that he had an accomplice. Normally, I'd say this is just a Hail Mary to try to get the blame off him. One of his victims that survived, who was key in getting a conviction for him, he was trapped in the John Wayne Gacy house and suffered unspeakable things. For whatever reason, he was dumped in Lincoln Park. He said that when he was drifting in and out of consciousness, sometimes it sounded like there was somebody else in John Wayne Gacy's house.
Now that's a lot about John Wayne Gacy, and I can safely say he's not resting in peace. He is burning down there in hell with the devil. Who else is in hell? Probably Hitler. Who else could be in hell? Is that? No, there's got to be more. Napoleon is Napoleon Dynamite? No, that's like, who's the guy in Europe? Wow, I took AP Euro too. Like, you could tell it did not stick. Former All That cast member Kyle Sullivan says dialogue coach Brian Peck was pen pals with the notorious killer clown. So Brian Peck was purposely reaching out and having a relationship with this guy. An exclusive clip shared with People, former All That cast member Kyle Sullivan, then 14, talks about seeing the inside of Brian Peck's home, which included a shrine to the Planet of Apes, and most notably a painting of a clown holding balloons, which seemingly had nothing to do with the famous sci-fi franchise. He explains that he first sighted the clown painting while at a barbecue at Brian Peck's house, which, okay, Dan Schneider, why don't you acknowledge that like your employees were hosting barbecues with these kids at his home? Brian got really excited when I asked him about it. He flipped the thing around, and to the back it said, "To Brian, I hope you enjoy the painting. Best wishes, your friend John Wayne Gacy." Like full body chills. I can't. Oh my gosh, is this the picture too? Hold on. Jump scare people. Oh my. Wow, that is really freaky. So wait, is that supposed to be what he looked like as a clown? I can't. I would not want that in my home. I don't want any of this near any of me. Like, you know, banish away demon. Actually, I saw like 2 homeless people fighting the other day when I was walking, and one of them was like, "Rebuke, you demon," to the girl. They were just screaming at each other. I couldn't. I was like, "Get me out of here."
I remember at the time, I think it was about like 2.5 years in, everyone went to Brian's house for a barbecue, and his house was a little off. He had a room that was just dedicated to like vintage toys and comic books, and he'd converted his garage into like a Planet of the Apes shrine. I noticed a painting in the room that stuck out to me because...
Oh my gosh, that clown painting, I'm sorry to pause, but that is, I don't know if I can look at it. I'm gonna have nightmares.
It had nothing to do with Planet of the Apes. It was of a birthday clown holding balloons. And Brian got very excited when I asked him about it. He flipped the thing around, and on the back it said, "To Brian, I hope you enjoy the painting. Best wishes, your friend, John Wayne Gacy." It was a self-portrait of serial killer John Wayne Gacy.
Wait, what? A self-portrait of John Wayne Gacy. So does that mean self-portrait? That means that he drew it, right? Because if it was a portrait, it'd just be a portrait. But if it's a self-portrait, he painted it and then gifted it to this guy. In that moment, he was uncomfortable. He knew everyone had to see this. So he called in the parents and the kids to come and see it. And Brian was proud to show off his painting. The former child star also said Brian had collected letters that he had been sent to by Pogo the Clown, the killer clown, who R-worded and killed over 30 young men and boys. He was quoted saying he kept this pile of letters and photos from John Wayne Gacy in his nightstand next to his bed, and he pulls them out and starts to show them to me. That is so creepy that he's one, obsessed with this murderer, but then two, showing it off to these young people that he works with professionally.
At this point, I'm 14. I didn't know the details, but I knew this guy's a serial killer who killed a lot of young men and boys. My instinct was everyone has to see this. And so all the parents and the kids come into the room, and then Brian presents the painting again. And Brian actually developed a pen pal relationship with John. He kept this pile of letters and photos from John Wayne Gacy in his nightstand next to his bed. And he pulls them out and starts showing them to me. Your instinct is to give someone the benefit of the doubt. If you've known them for that long, even in the face of this really bad sign. It was one of those classic failures of group psychology.
This person commented, "It seriously makes me upset how many adults were aware of this thing, yet nothing happened for years." Another person wrote, "This is terrible, but I agree with Kyle Sullivan. Brian Peck and Nickelodeon should be held accountable for this. This is very inappropriate for kids' content. They deserve better than this." I agree with this person. So they write, "So the parents saw the painted portrait and the stack of letters, but decided not to do anything about all that." Another person said, "Way to go to, Kyle for speaking up," which honestly, kudos to you. I am really proud of all the people involved in this documentary for speaking up, including Drake Bell. Here's another comment. Ashley writes, "Isn't it funny how a 14-year-old could recognize that red flag, but none of the other adults could?" It makes me question, who are these adults and where were they mentally? But that's what's so weird about this industry, is because Dan Schneider, Brian Peck, people at Nickelodeon, they built these personal relationships with these stars, and they really shouldn't. It's not professional. Kyle shared that many Nickelodeon kids would spend time at Brian Peck's home. Quote, "All the parents loved him and trusted him." Kyle added, "Your instinct is to give someone the benefit of the doubt if you've known them for that long, even in the face of this really bad sign." Remember that Brian Peck was accused of giving these people drugs and then doing things to them. I mean, that's what, from my understanding, what Drake Bell had gone through and why Brian Peck was convicted. He would drug them and then do things to them. So to see Dan Schneider, I mean, to my opinion, he's fully aware of this. I mean, he's employing these people. To see him approve of these type of people to be around children, and then to look the other way when they are criminally convicted, not to even acknowledge it, is absolutely sick. And he also would kind of send some messages through his show. In this clip, I feel like he's mocking the entire situation.
Kyle Sullivan. He's getting very sleepy.
What? I'm not sleepy. I took my nap before I came to the studio.
Kyle Sullivan is falling into a deep, deep sleep.
Sir, if you're trying to hypnotize me, it's not happening. That only works on idiots.
Kyle Sullivan. In 3 seconds, he'll do whatever I say.
No, I will not.
1, 2,
This is ridiculous.
3. Kyle Sullivan. Act like a chicken.
So I can kind of see if his method was to drug these children and then to tell them what to do, it's kind of, it's giving a little bit of mocking victim vibes.
Kyle Sullivan. Drop your pants. Now, wake up.
What happened? Where am I?
Oh, I love me.
Why are my pants like this?
I remember seeing that scene when I was growing up, and of course I didn't think anything of it, but now knowing that they would drug the children and then do things to them, and I guess drugging them so that they wouldn't be aware of what's happening to them, so they couldn't recall it to their parents or authorities. It's really disgusting. The documentary is going to uncover the price that many former child actors say they paid while working long hours in an emotionally manipulative and sometimes inappropriately charged environment. The series directors say, when we uncovered this revelation during the process of making the documentary, we were shocked. It raised a lot of questions about power dynamics on and off set and what dangers were hiding in plain sight. Nickelodeon has responded to Drake Bell coming forward, saying that now that Drake Bell has disclosed his identity as the plaintiff in the 2004 case, we are dismayed and saddened to learn of the trauma he has endured. We commend and support the strength required to come forward. Which, if they said anything other, they would have been canceled. So while I want to be like, that is nice, I also want to keep in mind that Nickelodeon is a big part of the problem here. I think we're actually going to be protesting them on Tuesday. So if you are going to be in the LA area, you should go protest with Alexa Nicholas. Go check out the Eat Predators page. I think they're organizing it. I want to remind you guys that there are a lot of people in the industry who have defended Brian Peck. Actors, industry figures, people like James Marsden. We've got Taran Killam. We've got Alan Thicke. We've got a producer, Thomas DeSanto. We've got Ron Melendez, Will Fredel. A lot of people who, I don't know why they would defend any of this behavior. One of his friends, this actor, James Marsden, said, I assure you what Brian has been through in the last year is the suffering of 100 men. I've seen the effects of the situation and what it's done to Brian, and I know for a fact that he regrets any mistakes he made. Well, it's more than just regretting mistakes he made. I mean, this guy was obsessing over a criminal, doing things to children. I just can't imagine this person putting a statement out in support of this type of person, like this kind of criminal. So there's going to be a lot we learned from this documentary, and I'll be here to bring some of the highlights to you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in a new one soon. Bye, guys.